Hi besties and welcome back to my trash channel. I know this part took a long time to come out. I've been stressed with school and I've fallen asleep after school most days this week. But I have a week off school now so I can finally get a break from it. But anyways, enjoy the video. You're crying. I am. Atsumu's hands raised from his sides and straight to his cheeks where he felt a clear dampness. Holy fuck. He was crying. He didn't even notice. You didn't notice? Atsumu shook his head. He was shocked himself now that he found out he had been crying. He thought it would be pretty easy to feel whether you had been or not. Yet somehow he didn't even feel his eyes tug. God, what was Kyumi doing to him? Is something on your mind? Do you want to talk about it? Atsumu gulped. He didn't know how to reply. He couldn't exactly tell Hinata what was provoking his sadness. He couldn't tell anyone, nor did he exactly feel like it. Hinata hummed as Atsumu watched as he shuffled in his seat and eventually stood up, just like Sakuatsu had just done. He offered a sympathetic smile in Atsumu's direction before he gestured for him to stand up too. Come on, let's go take a breather outside. Atsumu did nothing for a moment, but he soon nodded and stood up. He watched as Hinata said a sentence or two to Rose with a guilty and nervous smile on his face, but Atsumu couldn't hear what he was saying. Shoyo then walked off, again gesturing for Atsumu to follow, who complied whilst avoiding Rose's eyes by ducking his head downwards. The last thing he needed was some girl teasing him over the fact that he'd been crying. Even if she wouldn't have done that, his mind told him otherwise. It wasn't long before the pair were outside leaning up against the wall that he and Sakuatsu had been at just earlier. He didn't even know if the fresh air was helping him at all. If anything, being out in the open where his negative emotions were less disguised almost made him feel even worse. You wanna talk about it? Atsumu looked up. He had almost forgotten Hinata was the one who had taken him outside. You were crying, Tsumu. Something must have provoked it. I don't even know what to say. Well, what were you thinking about? Atsumu stayed silent. He couldn't tell him anything that had been going on. They had set up all this fake dating stuff because of him in the first place. Hinata saw clearly that he probably wasn't going to say anything more. He smiled softly as he walked to the free area beside Atsumu and leant against the wall, humming. You don't have to say anything if you're not comfortable with it. We can just stay silent. Hinata's humming never stopped, but Atsumu didn't mind it all that much. It was almost soothing. Yet still his mind ran wild. He wondered where Sakuatsu was now and if he was okay. But then his mind told him all kinds of things, like how Sakuatsu found his neediness annoying and wished all this fake dating stuff was over. Atsumu was slowly and subconsciously making himself believe all these possible lies were true. In reality, he knew Sakuatsu cared for him and didn't mind his neediness. He wasn't too sure about the fake dating part, but his mind couldn't rationalize the facts that he already knew. You know, I hate seeing you upset. It's been a while since I have. So, if there's anything I could do to help, I'm all ears. They made eye contact as Hinata smiled softly. This time he did feel his eyes tug. Fucking Sakuatsu Kyumi messing with his head like this by being such a good friend and supporting him despite the negatives he would receive afterwards. That's one of the things he liked so much about him. He promised he'd fake date him. He promised that he'd help make Hinata jealous. He never went back on his word. Not even once. He put so much effort into keeping the promise. And now Atsumu would have to face the repercussions of Kyumi's selflessness. He liked him. He loved him. Omi. He mumbled. Sakuatsu? What about him? Atsumu bit his lip. He couldn't have Sakuatsu. The only thing that his mind kept replaying in that moment were the words I want him. Him being his Omi. Atsumu looked to the ground. His whole body tensed until he quickly threw his arms around Shoyo, instantly pulling him into a hug. He needed one. Preferably from Sakuatsu, but Hinata was the closest person to him. Tsumu, I'm sorry. You're sorry? What for? I'm just sorry, I don't know what to say or do. Fuck. I'm just overreacting. It's definitely not that bad. But you look. I'm sorry show. Dash. Clicking his tongue, Sakuatsu walked back into the theater, a decent portion of sweets and more popcorn in his arms. He hummed as he walked up the stairs and back towards his seat, though what he wasn't expecting was the 3 vacant seats, only one being taken up by Rose. He raised an eyebrow as he settled the snacks down on his own seat and turned towards Rose to question her. Atsumu didn't say he was going anywhere, nor did he mention going to the bathroom. Where are those two? He didn't sit down. He was standing just in front of Hinata's seat, the one just next to Rose. I'm not sure. They both just left. What? That only provoked concern in Sakuatsu as he gulped. They just left. I don't really know what else to say. Well, did they say where they were going or? Rose nodded, picking up a piece of popcorn and crunching it before she spoke a reply. Hinata said something about getting a breather. I dunno. Atsumu looked kinda upset though. He did? Sakuatsu interrupted quickly and slightly startled Rose, who just nodded nervously. Sakuatsu couldn't help but be worried, but his half call was definitely uncalled for. He turned his head around to search for his phone. He didn't take it with him when he went to the bathroom, and luckily it was still on his seat where he had left it. He gulped a second time, swiftly picking up the gadget and walking back in the direction he had just came from. Hey, where are you going? She called, whispered. To find Atsumu, of course. I've got to make sure he's okay. Sakuatsu spoke as he stopped moving for a split moment so that he could actually hear what Rose actually had to say. She placed the popcorn bag she had on her lap onto the floor and shuffled to the edge of her seat so that Sakuatsu could hear her better. I'm sure he's fine. But if he's not, then I'm sure Hinata will have it under control. Come on. Sit back down. Sakuatsu shook his head and raised a disgusted eyebrow that spoke for itself, sending the message of what the fuck are you saying clearly to Rose. What kind of boyfriend would I be if I just left him if he was upset? He sighed. I'm leaving. He didn't say another word as he quickly turned around, half jogging towards the exit. He didn't even wait to listen to whatever Rose had to say as he half shouted, wait. She scoffed. She didn't want to be left alone and everyone was just running off as they pleased. She sighed before she reluctantly stood up, also making her way towards the exit. Sakuatsu's running continued until he was completely out of the theater room, though he began walking once he recalled Rose's words. A breather. They'd probably be outside. Sakuatsu jogged towards the exit, this time where he peeked his head around the door, which revealed a distraught-looking Atsumu in the arms of Hinata. You have nothing to be sorry about. I'm Arkina. A big deal out of nothing. I'm sorry. I'm still not sure what's making you upset, but it's clearly a big deal to you. Don't make it seem like it's nothing when it's hurting you. And a lot. Sakuatsu bit his lip as his eyes tugged downwards. Fuck. He always hated seeing Atsumu sad. He almost felt like he was going to cry now, which was never in his nature. It even surprised himself. Still sorry. Sakuatsu's guts turned as he watched Hinata's hand raise up to pat the blonde's hair. His eyes immediately went wide and his eyebrows furrowed inwards. What the fuck did he think he was doing? Atsumu was his. He wanted nothing more than to snatch the blonde away from Hinata at that moment. He wanted to be the one to comfort Atsumu, and that was exactly what he was planning on doing. Abruptly, he stormed towards the pair. Hinata must have seen him coming since he almost instantly removed his hold on Atsumu, startling him as he let out a gasp. Sakuatsu thought the battle to get Hinata off Atsumu would have been harder, but he guessed not. Oomi. Achu. Sakuatsu was jealous of Hinata and really wanted to glare at him or tell him to fuck off. Just something along the lines of that, though his jealousy would have to wait. Atsumu and his well-being was his main priority, which he made clear as he quickly pulled the blonde into a hug. One arm looped around the blonde's back and the other cupped the side of Atsumu's face as their foreheads rested against one another. Sakuatsu just chose to ignore Hinata. Hey, what's wrong? Nervously, Atsumu looked into Kiyumi's eyes and his arms looped around his neck. I'll be okay. No. What's making you upset? You're not okay. I am Omi. It's nothing bad. Seriously. Sakuatsu felt his eyes tug. He could barely withstand the glum look on Atsumu's face. He wished he could just take whatever was making him so upset away. Achoo. I'm okay. Really. Sakuatsu stroked the side of the soft skin on Atsumu's face with his thumb, which eventually managed to travel towards his lying lips, which his thumb traced over subconsciously. Maybe he couldn't take Atsumu's pain away, but instead a kiss might numb it for a little while. If he was honest, he completely forgot Hinata was even there. Sakuatsu wanted nothing more than to make Atsumu feel at least a little better, and maybe a kiss was the right thing for that. Atsumu was big on affection, so maybe a kiss and a hold and countless whispers of everything is going to be alright was exactly what he needed. Atsumu, please don't lie. Atsumu sniffled. He felt his eyes tug before yet another group of tears fell from his eyes. He squeezed Sakuatsu even tighter. Omi, I don't know what to say. I don't know. I don't know where to start. What am I meant to say? Anything you want to say. What's making you so upset? Achoo. You can tell me. You can trust me. Oh Omi. That simple yet meaningful word was all it took to make tears flood into Kayumi's eyes. He hadn't cried in ages. Yet Atsumu's upset state managed to provoke him into crying. He pulled Atsumu closer. He didn't think he'd ever cry over seeing anyone else cry. Never mind Atsumu. Yet here he was. You'll be okay, Achoo. I promise. As soon as you're ready to tell me anything, I'll be here to listen. Atsumu hummed. I know, Omi. I trust ya. I really do. I'm just. Atsumu bit his lip. He didn't know what else to say to build on what he had just said. It's okay. You tell me when you want to, or when you've calmed down. Sakuatsu smiled softly despite the tears still rolling down his cheeks. Atsumu seemed to have noticed them. His eyes opened wider as he gulped. Omi, are you okay? Yeah, I'm okay. Atsumu reached his hands up to wipe away the fumbling tears, though his hands still remained on his face even after the tears were gone. But yeah, I know, but I'm okay. I promise you that. I just hate seeing you so upset. I'm sorry. You have nothing to be sorry for. You don't need to apologize. Sakuatsu hummed softly in an attempt to calm the blonde down once again, and his fingers began petting the soft skin at the corner of Atsumu's lips. But you're upset now. I'm sorry. I really am. I didn't mean to make you cry. Sakuatsu quickly pressed their lips together. He smiled as he held himself against the blonde for a short while, and his fingers played with the blonde locks on the back of Atsumu's head. He smiled once again at their part. Both his and Atsumu's cheeks glowed a pigmented red as he began petting Atsumu's face once again. Just because I hate seeing you sad doesn't mean I'd rather leave you sad and alone. I hope I helped a little. Atsumu smiled. Yeah, Sakuatsu may have helped him, though he didn't expect this whole situation to happen in the first place. Maybe what he needed to do was embrace the Sakuatsu he had now instead of pushing him away. He should treasure what they have together while it's still there, even though the harsh truth of it ending hurt. What they had now was too precious for him to want to let go. He cracked a smile a second time as he placed a quick peck of his own to Kayumi's lips. What he needed was to see what was right in front of him physically and clearly. Sakuatsu was blushing, something that Atsumu had never seen before. What the fuck was he meant to think? Atsumu shook his head. Pushing Sakuatsu away wasn't a good option, and thinking about losing Sakuatsu only made him miserable. Now it was time for a new approach. His goal was to discover what ignoring his thoughts on losing Sakuatsu would do for him mentally, because every time Sakuatsu would give him any type of affection, his heart would skip a beat. And he loved that. He liked the sound of his idea more than the last, though he knew that ignoring his negative thoughts would be hard. Sometimes Sakuatsu would manage to make him forget the whole world existed. Much like now, both he and Sakuatsu managed to forget Hinata was just next to them. Let's go back. They all sat in the theater next to one another. Atsumu still appeared to be down. He was nibbling at his lip and scratching at his hands any chance he could. Sakuatsu was watching the whole time. He decided to grab his hands. He didn't want the blonde to make himself sore after all. Atsumu looked up at him with almost beady eyes before he nervously turned back to his lap again. He wasn't sure whether to let Sakuatsu hold his hands or push him away. Yet in the end, he decided to leave him be. He didn't mind the touch. He just didn't want to get hurt. Eventually, they all decided to get up and leave. Rose and Hinata both came to realize that the movie was utter shit and made absolutely no sense. Hinata suggested going somewhere else. Maybe for some food or something. Atsumu almost agreed, but Sakuatsu seemed to have other plans as he practically dragged Atsumu out of the building, shouting a quick sorry Hinata's as Rose's way. Needless to say, Atsumu wasn't exactly upset with Sakuatsu's actions. He honestly wanted to get out of this building as soon as possible. It was practically suffocating him at this point. Hey, Omi, are we going home? Sakuatsu hummed, grabbing Atsumu's hand and holding it tight with a soft smile. Maybe. I'd like to go home. You sure? We could go grab something to eat. No. We've probably got something at home. I doubt there's much honestly. But hey, if you say so. Sakuatsu smiled a second time whilst he released his hold on Atsumu's hand. Instead he placed it on the blonde's shoulder and pulled him closer towards him. Atsumu eventually rested his head on Sakuatsu's shoulder with a little prompting. His cheeks glowing pink. How far are we away? I'm tired. Ever thought that you might just be hungry? How does that make sense? You seem to feel weak and tired when you're hungry. Well, some of the time at least. Atsumu shook his head. I'm not hungry. We still have a train ride to get on. You sure you don't want to eat beforehand? I swear. I'm not that hungry, okay? Nervously, Sakuatsu bit his lip as he turned to look down at the blonde sympathetically, his hand rubbing the side of Atsumu's neck affectionately. He took in a strong gasp of air before he stopped walking, startling the blonde. Omi, you okay? Sakuatsu hummed, his tongue tracing over the areas his teeth had just been biting down at. Let's go eat. Omi, I'm fine. Really? You're not. You look like shit. Plus you're not cussing me out every 2 seconds. You clearly need cheering up. Wow. Thanks Omi. Sakuatsu smiled before he quickly grabbed Atsumu's hand. The blonde's eyes widened in surprise as Sakuatsu began dragging him left of where they were originally walking. Omi. What? We're getting something to eat. I'm not hungry. Well, you need cheering up then. Come on. I know you're hungry. Omi. Eventually, it was more like the pair were walking side by side rather than one dragging the other around, though their hands still remained interlocked. Atsumu wouldn't stop whining the whole time they walked about where they were going. Though Sakuatsu guessed it was a valid question. MC Donald's. HAA. I saw one nearby. Let's go. You don't even like it that much Yeah, but for some reason you seem to like their shitty chicken nuggets so much. They're good. To you maybe. But you'll eat anything. I think you just like the idea of eating chicken nuggets than actually eating them. No. They're good. If you don't like them so much then we can go home. Shut up. You like it so we're going. Sakuatsu scoffed as he began half dragging him again and the blonde let out a subtle whine. His legs behind him barely being able to catch up to Sakuatsu's, now even faster, walking pace. Omi. Shut up. Atsumu continuously hummed as he practically swallowed a chicken nugget whole, sticking a thumbs up in Sakuatsu's direction every time he ate one and trying his best to say it's really good despite his mouth being disgustingly filled with food. Sakuatsu would just simply sigh and shake his head with a smile on his face, his chin resting in his palm. Sakuatsu knew Atsumu's mood would improve with the offering of food, though he didn't expect it to have worked this well. Do ya want one? Atsumu actually did well in forming a sentence despite his stuffed mouth as he offered one of the nuggets out to Sakuatsu, who shook his head. He was enjoying himself enough already seeing how happy the blonde had become. He smiled as he took the nugget from the blonde's hand before he quickly offered it to Atsumu's mouth. Blood pumped to his cheeks and he nervously took it back with his teeth and took small bites yet quick bites from it. Sakuatsu grinned. Atsumu was definitely a foodie, though not as much as his brother. You could just tell they were related if you were blind and couldn't tell from their matching appearance instead. Nah, you enjoy it. Atsumu nodded and his head ducked down, still trying to disguise his bulging cheeks. Sakuatsu must have decided at that moment that seeing Atsumu eat was probably the most adorable thing he could ever see. Atsumu usually would eat like he hadn't eaten in weeks, and it wasn't like anything had changed about that. It was just different now. Atsumu clearly enjoyed his food. It was disgustingly adorable. You sure you don't want anything? Yeah, I already told you I don't like chicken nuggets. I mean like, you could order something you do like. I just don't really like McDonald's. What? Then why are we here? I swear you already knew that. You mentioned it on the way here. I just thought you meant chicken nuggets, not just McDonald's as a whole. Well, now you know. I'm a McDonald's hater. Their food is crappy and calorific. The worst combination. But chicken nuggets though, they're so good. Atsumu practically drooled over his words as he shoved yet another nugget into his mouth and chewed it carelessly. Sakuatsu simply scoffed. If you say so. I don't know how you can hate em. Yeah, just weird. And you're like a garbage disposal. You'll eat anything. Not everything. Everything. Atsumu rolled his eyes, taking an aggressive sip from his straw after taking a short break from his food. You sure there's nothing you like? Very sure. But have you tried the whole menu? Why the fuck would I do that? I've tried a burger, the nuggets, even the fucking wraps, and they all taste like shit. But what about the drinks? What about them? It's not like they actually make them. That Coke you're drinking wasn't made here, you know. It was bought. I know that. I'm not that dumb, you know. Atsumu huffed as he took yet another angry gulp from his straw, this time slightly squeezing the bottle to emphasize his anger, though Sakuatsu knew he was just acting at being mad. Anyone would. Atsumu was a bad liar and actor. Have you tried the frap? No. And I don't plan on doing so. Why? The iced frap is so good. I seriously doubt it. Nothing from McDonald's can be so good. Well, I'm tellin' ya, it's really good. Yeah, gonna buy me one when we set off to go home. What? I already paid for you to go to the arcade. What more do you want from me? For you to buy me a frap clearly. Well, too bad. You have your own money. Buy your own frap. But Omi, it will make me feel so much better. Shut up you. I already bought your meal. And that's all you're getting. I might cry. Atsumu sniffled as he faked wiping a tear from his eye before he sadly took a bite from his endless supply of nuggets, though he laughed when he heard Sakuatsu scoff. Still the same answer. I don't know what you're hoping for. A frap. Too bad. I'm not buying you a frap. He watched as Atsumu's cheeks puffed out and he couldn't tell whether it was because he was pouting or because his mouth was filled with food. Either way, he looked cute. They sat in silence for a moment. Neither had much more to say and Sakuatsu was fine with just watching the blonde eat. He could do it for days on end and not get bored. Just seeing how his face would light up every time he took a single bite filled his heart with some strange type of joy. But the silence didn't last forever as eventually, Atsumu shuffled to the edge of his seat before he stood up. Where are you going? To get a frap. Since someone is so mean and won't buy me one. I'm not mean for not buying you a frap. Be grateful I even bought you food. I am just not letting you know that I'm grateful yet. Gee, thanks. Means a lot. Shut up and wait here whilst I get my drink. Sakuatsu rolled his eyes and pulled his phone from his pocket as he watched the blonde walk away from their table and towards the front desk. He didn't seem like he was going to shut up about his fucking frap. So him leaving and finally getting it was actually a good idea. His food didn't seem to be shutting him up. Even when his mouth was full, he'd still be talking. Sakuatsu honestly still wondered how he didn't run out of things to say. But that's Atsumu for you. He could be talking about utter nonsense and more than half the time you'd stay interested. Yeah, Atsumu was a very interesting character and someone who you could click with immediately. He was really easy to get to know. At least that is if you're nice to him and you meet him on a good day. Sakuatsu sighed as he crossed his feet over one another under the table and relaxed his back against the wall where he began to play on his phone. He played dumb phone games which had millions of ads, but he rarely even opened the app. He didn't care enough to pay for ad block. Yeah, Atsumu was a great person. Maybe that's why Hinata liked and likes him so much. His teeth clenched together and his eyes squinted slightly as the vision of Hinata hugging Atsumu rushed back into his mind. He wasn't even looking at his phone anymore. Instead he was deep in thought while his alarming pair of eyes stared deeply at the seat beside him, like it was the most interesting thing in the world, though it wasn't like he was actually paying it any attention. He recalled Hinata's arms laced around Atsumu while the blonde sobbed into his shoulder. Shit. Atsumu was upset and fucking Hinata was the first one to comfort him. It pissed him off. Hinata pissed him off. But himself not realizing that Atsumu was upset in the first place enraged him even more. His face dropped into more of a frown. He felt like a bad boyfriend, despite the fact that he and Atsumu weren't even dating. He felt like he had a duty now to take care of the blonde and make sure he was okay. He didn't want Hinata to interfere with that. Omi. Atsumu half shouted as he sat back down at his seat, though Sakuatsu barely even noticed the blonde was back, his eyes glued to the seat beside him as he was still lost in thought. Omi. He shouted again, and this time he was successful in regaining Sakuatsu's attention. He raised an eyebrow as Sakuatsu looked his way with startled features. What were you thinking about? Nothing. Sakuatsu's eyebrows were hunched inwards and his teeth bit at the inner walls of his mouth and he fell into his own mind for a second time. Atsumu scoffed and took a sip from his frap before he called out for Sakuatsu yet again, waving an obnoxious hand in front of Kiyumi's face. Omi. This time Sakuatsu was even more startled as he turned to see what the blonde wanted a second time. What? Stop zoning out, would ya? What are you thinking about? Nothing. He repeated, though Atsumu just looked at him with a deadpan expression whilst he rubbed his forehead with his hand. It sure doesn't seem like nothing. Did something happen when I was gone? No, I don't know what you want me to say, but nothing happened. You look pissed. And? What do ya mean and? What's pissin' you off, idiot? Sakuatsu groaned as he removed his back from the wall. Instead he rested his elbows on the table and his head on top of his hands. Nothing. Well, what is nothing? Why are you so persistent? Why won't you just tell me why you look mad? What? Am I not allowed to be mad? No one said that. Just tell me what's up. I don't wanna make a scene. Atsumu didn't say anything else. Instead he took aggressive sips from his straw, clearly trying to edge Sakuatsu to speak up in a non-verbal and idiotic way, which somehow, Sakuatsu finally succumbed to, sighing before he opened his mouth to speak up. Although Atsumu had no clue as to what Kiyumi would say, what he did even up coming out with was most definitely the last thing he expected. Hinata. What did Hinata do? Sakuatsu sighed. He really did not want to say anything else. He wasn't sure how the blonde would react, but he had already started, and it wasn't like the blonde would actually let him stop halfway through explaining himself, especially after he had said Hinata's name. You were hugging him. Atsumu gulped as his voice got caught in his throat, his eyebrow raised questioningly. Yeah, he was comforting me. Why? The word just fell out of his mouth despite knowing it was a dumb question. What do you mean why? Shit. Kiyumi gulped. What he was saying was clearly coming out incorrectly. He was jealous of Hinata hugging him, though he couldn't exactly just say that straight up. Well, we're meant to be fake dating, aren't we? It's not exactly convincing. He cut himself off. He didn't know what he was saying at this point, but his sentence was already halfway done. He couldn't exactly leave it there. If you're just going to hug him so easily. He was an idiot. He already regretted what he said and he could imagine how wrong it probably would have sounded for Atsumu. He was comforting Miyomi. Is he not allowed to do that? It's not like we're actually dating anyways. What's the big deal? Atsumu's tone immediately changed, as if Sakuatsu had been attacking him for his actions. Fuck. Sakuatsu knew what he was saying would have come out wrong. Why couldn't he just have shut himself up? He regretted his decision of speaking, yet his mouth wouldn't stop running. But you were hugging him. Okay, and how are we meant to make us dating seem legit then? That's the thing, Omi. We're not actually dating. Yeah, making a big deal out of nothing. Achoo. I don't know what you're trying to say, but I don't like it. All I'm saying is that you were hugging Shoyo. What's the big fucking deal? Yeah, I hugged Shoyo because I was sad. What is your deal? The point of all of this is to get me and Shoyo back together, right? Stop making such a fuss. Atsumu looked downwards. He felt guilty for raising his voice, yet he also felt guilty for using that as an excuse. He knew full well he didn't want to get back with Shoyo anymore and that he was practically dragging Sakuatsu along, but Kyumi didn't know that. Don't you want to make him jealous? Isn't that the whole point? I'm literally helping you and here you are acting like an idiot. An idiot? The fuck, Kyumi? No one's forcing you to help me. If you didn't want to in the first place then just don't. Sakuatsu gulped. He was angry and he felt guilty too for raising his voice and taking his jealousy out on Atsumu. It wasn't like it was his fault he felt this way. It's fine. I want to help. Well, you sure didn't make it seem that way. Fuck Omi. If you felt like you were forced to do this then you should have just said something. I want to help. But you're helping me. There's no benefit for you, right? Geez, Kyumi. Yeah. I was hugging Shoyo. What's it to you? I can do whatever the fuck I want. We're not actually dating Sakuatsu, so don't act like we are right now. Atsumu stayed silent for a moment, resting his hands on his face. He supposed he was projecting his own insecurities on Sakuatsu now too. It was clear, at least to Atsumu, that he was upset with the fact that he and Sakuatsu weren't actually dating. But that wasn't Sakuatsu's fault. Just neither of them could stop their running mouths. I'm sore. No, you're not fucking sorry. You wouldn't have said that shit in the first place. Atsumu supposed he was being oversensitive too. He was projecting what made him sad onto Kyumi. The fact that they weren't dating. Achoo. Fuck you. Don't agree to something you have interest in. I never said that. Well, you implied it. Okay, well, it wasn't what I meant. I didn't mean for anything I said to come out the way it did. Atsumu groaned before he forcefully stood up. His eyebrows arched downwards as he looked towards Sakuatsu. You've said what you've said. Just don't agree to fake date me if you know it's not going to make you happy. I never said it didn't. Atsumu gulped. He felt his eyes tug. Maybe he had gone overboard in the anger department. Sakuatsu's voice really did sound hurt by Atsumu's words and was extremely apologetic. Now Atsumu just felt guilty. Atsumu shook his head as he grabbed his frap and turned away as he began to walk. He wasn't surprised when Kyumi soon followed after him. A dumb and Sakuatsu look on his face as he quickly laced his arms around the blonde and rested his head on his shoulder. His stomach pressed up against Atsumu's back. Sakuatsu had started all this drama. It was his fault. He regretted saying every wrong-sounding word that offended the blonde. He had upset him. It didn't take a genius to tell that. I'm sorry. Atsumu bit his lip as he looked down, a pink tint rising at his cheeks. Fuck. He couldn't stay mad at Sakuatsu. He didn't want to. Okay. End of part 8. Red Heart. Hi besties. I hope you enjoyed the video. I don't have much to say. This vid took a while to come out and I'm really sorry for that. But it's here now. I'm off school for a week so I should be able to upload my frequently. Again, I'm sorry for the wait. But I hope it was worth it. Bye besties. Love you all.